Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Staci, and I think I may have mentioned on this show before, and if not, I definitely should have. I am a big fan of musicals, so long as they're like prior to the 70s or the mid-60s. I really like a lot of the old Hollywood musicals, even though, particularly with the ones like with Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, those scripts all felt very similar to the point that even sometimes they just had their same names. So Mickey was called Mickey a number of times. It's like, yeah, you're playing yourself, and I've seen this story before, but I'm going to watch it again and enjoy it because it's fun to see you guys together. Although I will ignore that blackface scene because no. But once old Hollywood sort of died down and the contract system went away, which I'm not upset about. I think the contract system was definitely problematic, but it then meant you didn't have, this stable of stars that you could constantly put together to put in musicals. It felt harder to make a good musical. Like the talent or the inspiration or something wasn't there. And, the times were changing. So you saw this with some of the musicals that the songs changed. So even like with some of the musicals in the 60s, I'm not that big a fan of, like How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I'm just like, yeah, okay. But can we go back to like, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, or Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse, or Gene Kelly, or all those greats from like the 40s and 50s. Those were fantastic. So when we started getting this sort of resurgence in musicals in the 21st century, I was excited, but I was a bit hesitant. It started off pretty well. I really liked Chicago to the point that like I saw the movie first and loved it, and then saw the stage show and I was kind of actually disappointed because at least for the touring production I saw, they have the band on the stage like you're in an actual, not a cabaret, but a small club like that. But that limits what then you can do dance-wise on the stage. So in the movie, the Cell Block Tango is this great, huge production number, and they're allowed to do a lot with it. And you got, the very famous shot of the multi-layers of the female silhouettes with the red light behind them. That was fantastic. On stage, it's not that great. I was very disappointed. I was just like, oh, you are not that like show-stopping as I wanted you to be, and I'm sad. And then you got some that were just not great musicals, period, which I won't mention by name. But then you also started seeing this more trend of the quote-unquote jukebox musical, which is musicals based off of pre-existing songs, not written solely for the musical, but as if you played songs in a jukebox and then put a story to them rather than the reverse. So like a famous example of this is Across the Universe, which was based off of the songs of the Beatles. And it's okay, but the storyline feels a bit like, yeah, no, I don't think this is what the Beatles were doing when they wrote these songs. There's American Idiot, the Broadway play, but has not been made into a movie yet. That actually works pretty well because Green Day was kind of writing a story on that album, so it was kind of already there. Then there was things like Mamma Mia. And I have not actually seen the first Mamma Mia, partly because I'm not a big fan of ABBA, like at all. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of just the 70s in general, but not the biggest fan of ABBA, to the point that a number of the songs actually like bug me. And if they come on the radio, I'm just like, quick, turn it, change it off. I don't want to hear it. Go away. So I did not actually see the first Mamma Mia, but I have seen the second Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. So my review is probably going to come off a little strange because I cannot reference this to the first, how it compares to the first, you know, how is it different since we now do have the younger version of a number of these characters, but we didn't have that in the first. And in looking this up, there are actually a number of songs in both movies for some reason. I don't quite know. The first Mamma Mia was evidently very financially successful. So they're like, hey, we could totally do a second. And the producer or whoever, when they were saying this, was like, there's so many other ABBA songs we haven't touched. And if there were so many other ABBA songs you haven't touched, why do you have 6 that you've repeated in some way or another when there's so many? It's like, it feels almost like there actually aren't so many ABBA songs, that you only have so many and you have to, you know, figure out a way to rehash them slightly differently. But so anyways, going into Mamma Mia 2, which is not actually the title, it's Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, I was a bit hesitant. I was a bit like, I just can already tell I'm probably not going to like this because A, ABBA, and B, one of the great things about the old Hollywood musicals was there were some people who were actually taken from Broadway and then made into movie stars because they were that great. And with modern movie musicals, we don't really do that. We just take regular Hollywood stars and put them into musicals, whether they can sing or dance or not. So, yeah. So this film, there's a flashing back and forth element going on. The character that Meryl Streep played in the first one, Donna, has evidently died. And that's not really a spoiler because we immediately start referencing it. I have no idea whether or not she was dead at the end of the first one. So maybe that's not a spoiler for anyone who's seen the first one, but it's not a spoiler in this film because we immediately are referencing like, oh, she's been dead a year. And we want to put on this, we want to open this hotel that was always her dream in honor of her. So her daughter, Sophie, played by Amanda Seyfried, wants to open this hotel, but her fiance, Sky, is currently in New York learning the hotel business, but they've evidently been having an argument about whether or not they should stay on the island that Sophie currently lives or whether they should go to New York. He wants to go. She wants to stay. This is an argument they've been rehashing a number of times, it seems, and we don't really settle it at first. She has invited a number of, I guess, famous and or rich guests to the opening of the hotel, but we don't really get them by name, so I'm not sure who they're supposed to be. She still has the 3 dads played by Pierce Brosnan, Stellan Skarsgård, and Colin Firth, but only one of them, the one played by Pierce Brosnan, is currently on the island, and the other 2 are not there, and it does not seem they will be able to come for the opening of the hotel. But her mother's friends, played by Christine Baranski and Julie Walters, have come both to support this opening of the hotel, but also to support the daughter just because she's going through this hard time, it being the 1-year anniversary of her mother's death. So you start getting this flashback of, oh, your mother was so amazing. And we see the young Donna, who's played by Lily James, as she graduates from, I'm not sure if it was high school or college. I think it was college. I thought it said Cambridge, but I'm trying to also guess her age. And it seemed like she was not quite of college graduating age, given the years that we heard. So I'm not sure. But she graduates with her friends and decides she wants to go off into the world and, experience the world and find her place, as people tend to do at that age. So she somehow hears about this small island in Greece and tries to get there. And along the way meets the 3 guys who are potentially Sophie's father. And we get the whole story of how she meets them and how it turns out that she's not sure which one the father is because circumstances. And along the way, we, of course, get the ABBA songs. It takes me a little while to get into this film. And I'm not quite sure how much of that is, again, because I don't like ABBA, but I know there's definitely a part. But also partly because, at least at the very beginning, you start with Sophie singing sort of a cappella as she's writing out the invitations to the opening of this hotel. And Amanda Seyfried was also in the film version of the musical Les Miserables. And that one, I think I definitely wasn't a big fan of because it struggled so much from the fact that the actors all had to sing live as they were acting instead of acting along with a pre-recorded version of the songs, which I think would have helped because, again, they're not necessarily the best singers. And when we start having Amanda Seyfried singing a cappella, I'm just like, yeah, I like you, but you're not the best singer. You're just not. But thankfully, as we go along with the film, it's only really the first song that she or almost anyone sings a cappella. And then with the rest, with the music, she actually doesn't sound terrible. She sounds really great. And I'm not sure if that's just because she has the music supporting her or if, her voice was tuned in the studio where it wasn't so much when there's nothing else to tune but the voice. Not sure. But the first couple of songs, I'm just like, oh, this is going to feel like a long movie, isn't it? Like, I already don't like these songs and you're not singing, but okay. Thankfully, it gets a bit better. The young dynamos especially play their parts really well. I think, again, I didn't see the first ones to the point that you don't actually hear their names too much except for Donna's. So I didn't even know what Christine Baranski's character's name was until the end of the film with the credits going. I was like, did anyone ever say your name in this film? I'm not sure. That's one of those things where I guess people who had seen the first film would totally already know, but I don't. So you're just Christine Baranski in my head because I don't think anyone ever said your name. We do get Julie Walters' name about halfway, 2/3 through her character's name is Rosie, but I was just like, for most of the movie, you were also that woman, I can't quite remember who you are, but with the short hair, because it took me until the end of the film to realize why she looks so familiar and who she is. But yeah, the young dynamos are pretty good. Lily James plays her part well, and we already kind of knew she could sing because she was in the live action version of Disney's Cinderella. So I was like, okay, I already get it. You have some, musical experience, if not a musical background. She's pretty good to the point that she actually, even though I'm not a fan of the music, did make me want to go out and download a couple of the songs. Both the title song, which I like the way that they start it slowly because she's supposed to be brokenhearted at that time, but also the song Andante, Andante. As she was singing that, I was just like, dang you. I don't like this music. I don't want to like this music. And yet I love the way you're doing the song. I want to go immediately home and download the song. I didn't because of timing, but it's so on my list to go and get that song, even though not a fan of the music because I thought she was great. But even more than Lily James is Jessica Keenan-Wynn, who plays the younger version of Christine Baranski's character. She is fantastic as her role. And that's just a fun role to play. Christine Baranski, I really like. She often does great roles. But this role of the sort of, she's not a sex fiend per se, but she clearly likes men and sex and men with money who will give her sex, I guess. Jessica Keenan-Wynn, who I'm not familiar with. So as I'm watching her, I'm like, this kind of feels like almost Kate McKinnon playing Christine Baranski. And I am okay with that. That works so well for me. I almost don't want to keep going back to the quote unquote present time because A, Donna's dead. So we're missing this dynamic between the three dynamos. But also B, the young version of Christine Baranski's character is just great. Can we stick with her more? I know we're supposed to be on Donna. This is Donna's story and how we get Donna to have Sophie. But I want to stick with this young lady because she's just so enjoyable. And also I feel the dynamos get a little short shrift behind Donna. Donna's always in the center. This feels very much about Donna. I'm like, they have their own lives, right? Outside of, just being her sidekicks, because it doesn't quite feel like it. And I really want to know more about her and how she gets to her however many marriages that we hint at later. Can we have a side movie about that character? I'd actually kind of be interested in that. But beyond that, the songs, okay. Again, the problem with Jukebox Jukebox Musicals is that these songs already existed and were not written for the storyline, so forcing them into the storyline kind of feels awkward at times. Like, especially there's the scene where she first meets and I don't even remember which guy is which name now, but the younger version of Colin Firth's character, and they sing Waterloo, and I'm like, why are you singing about Waterloo when you're trying to like hook up with this young lady? Oh, it's because there's, you know, a bust of Napoleon in this restaurant. That's thanks scriptwriter for putting that in there, so we have a reason to sing about Waterloo, because otherwise, why are we singing about Waterloo? It's that sort of thing of, yeah, you kind of have to force this in because otherwise it doesn't quite work. So like, for example, and this is in all the trailers, Cher plays Amanda Seyfried's grandmother, Ruby, who evidently had a fling long ago with Andy Garcia's character, Fernando. And I feel like Andy Garcia is just now making a career in this later portion of his life of playing like the most charming, I kind of want to marry you older gentleman in films, as he did in Book Club, which we talked about a few episodes ago. I'm just like, dude, what you're saying doesn't even quite make any sense, but you are charming, and I really do like you. Why do you keep doing this to me? Stop it. But anyways, they have a song. His name is Fernando, so that we can get the ABBA song Fernando. And I'm like, okay, cool, fine, you made him Fernando. I'm not too upset about that. I kind of figure some characters would have to have names if you have a song with a name in it. But you're singing about like a revolution or a battle or something. What? When did this happen? Because there's nothing else hinted in your life to say that either of you were revolutionaries or battles or anything. But that's the lyrics of the song, and we have to put that in there. So, okay. I like this movie well enough. I don't like it well enough to go back and see the first one. I really don't even care, even though, again, the first one, Meryl Streep, and I like Meryl Streep, but I'm just like, you know what? I don't feel the need to know whatever that storyline was, since we don't seem to have resolved it too much by what we get in the second film. And since there would be repeats of several of the songs, I don't want to do that. So you know what? I've seen the first one. It's fine. I would watch certain parts of it again on TV, but not the whole thing, just because other parts I was just like, oh, get on with it. Move on. Let's go. So I think for people who were fans of the first one, they'll probably really like this one. Though again, I haven't seen it, so I can't fully judge. For the people in the audience I saw it with, they seem to really like it. And I heard from overhearing conversations that most of them had seen the first one. So I think it still holds up pretty well for that. So we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Movie Podcast. Our second movie today on this Jukebox Musical themed show is Rock of Ages, which is, I knew it was based off of a Broadway show, and I could tell from the title it probably had rock music, and that was all I knew about it. And I didn't actually even want to see it when it first came out, just because beyond even ABBA, which I at least have heard the songs of, I don't really listen to rock, and so I was afraid like I wouldn't actually know any of the songs whatsoever. So thus I wouldn't have that sort of nostalgia, I guess you'd say, to carry me through the film of, oh yes, oh this song, oh I love this song. I wouldn't have that. I actually did recognize a few more songs than I had expected to, but then there were, you know, whole long periods of the film where it's like, okay, we're getting to like 3 songs in a row or 4 songs in a row now where I have no clue what this is or who this is by. So I'm just go on, whatever. I don't know what this is. I can't really even judge it because you've obviously changed it a bit to fit in this musical. So I'm not even sure whether or not I like this song because I'm still thinking about what would that sound like originally? What does that sound like on the radio? And I think part of the song, because this is a musical based off of the music of rock and because of the storyline, I kept thinking of what does the song sound like in real life, because the storyline is that Julianne Hough's character comes from, I think she's from Oklahoma. It doesn't matter. She's supposed to just represent any small town girl, and you do get that song in there, coming to, you know, LA and Hollywood with big dreams of making it and finding out that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. She gets mugged on her first day there because of course she does. But this happens to be witnessed by a guy who works at the Bourbon Room, which is evidently a famous rock club or something. And she's so excited to see that. And he feels really bad for her getting mugged. So he offers to get her a job at the club because one of the waitresses has just quit. And the club is owned by Alec Baldwin with his character has some very interesting hair. And I just don't quite know what he's doing. His business partner, assistant, possible lover, it's later shown something, is played by Russell Brand, who also has interesting hair. And they don't like hiring singers, and yet it seems that every person in this bar wants to be in the music industry somehow. So I'm not quite sure how that works out. If you don't like hiring singers, you seem to only hire singers or people who play in their bands. But anyways, they're working at this club. This club is supposed to have a very famous performance on Friday night by Staci Jax, who is played by Tom Cruise. And the whole movie was so frustrated that his character's name was Staci because they kept saying it and he spells it Stacee for some reason. And I was just like, you seem like possibly the most ridiculous character in this movie, which is quite amazing because Alec Baldwin and Russell Brand are doing something very interesting. And Bryan Cranston's in this as the mayor, and his whole storyline is not what I expected. And yet every time we talk about Staci, I'm just like, stop calling him Staci. That is my name. That's not Staci. That's not a Staci. No, not allowed. Just, so frustrated with that. But anyways, so it's hard to tell even what the time frame of this is. They mentioned Staci's concert on Friday, like this is coming up this week. But then Julianne Hough's character falls in love then in like a day. And you see their relationship progress over a week where it seems they immediately get together and move in together and fall in love. I'm like, wait, this is supposed to happen in like less than a week? Really? What? Why am I supposed to care about these characters if, and we do see a problem later with the relationship where there is a misunderstanding and they sort of break up and say hurtful things. And it's just like, look, I would totally kind of care more if it felt like you'd actually had any time to develop this relationship. But I'm not sure that I'm supposed to care about, but you're so good together when you literally met like 3 days ago. Like, what is this? So there's a side story kind of going on with Bryan Cranston, who I think he's been elected. It almost seems like he's running for, but I think he has actually just been elected mayor. And his wife is played by Catherine Zeta-Jones. And they have a plan to clean up LA by like getting rid of rock and roll somehow. Because, yeah, I don't quite understand that plan. And you do get later why Catherine Zeta-Jones' character, whose name is Patricia or Patty, feels so very strongly about this, especially about Staci Jax. And you kind of get it, you can kind of tell as the movie's going on of, oh yeah, there was probably something there. Of all the actors in this film, I think Catherine Zeta-Jones is doing the best job, only because she's the only one who doesn't actually feel like she's playing some sort of stereotype or typical version of herself. Like everyone else kind of feels like you're kind of just playing a version of yourself. Julianne Hough feels very Julianne Hough. Alec Baldwin feels, if not very Alec Baldwin, very let's play Alec Baldwin, like almost as if he was appearing on Saturday Night Live or something as himself or a similar character. Everyone sort of feels like, yeah, so it's just you, to the point that I don't even remember anyone's character's name other than the aforementioned Stacey Jax, and Julianne Hough's character's name, I think, is Sherry. And Catherine's is Patty, and that's all I've got. I don't remember any of the other guys. Malin Akerman is in this as a reporter for Rolling Stone. I have no clue what her character name is, and she has this whole almost ridiculous storyline with Stacey Jax where I don't quite know what to think of it, because at first it seems they do connect, and then they don't connect, but they do connect, and they're really into each other for some reason, and what? Just, the singing in this was actually not terrible. Julianne Hough actually sings pretty well. I was a bit surprised about that because I know, she started as a dancer on, Dancing with the Stars. So she actually does not really dance in this film at all. It was like completely shocking to me. I was like, I know you're a dancer and yet you almost never dance, but you sing a lot and I totally didn't know you were a singer. What? And this film is directed by Adam Shankman, which is not actually surprising. It feels very much like a film he would direct. But the choreography is actually by Mia Michaels. And that was surprising because when I saw that at the beginning of the credits, I was like, oh, Mia Michaels. Oh, I loved Mia Michaels' routines on So You Think You Can Dance when I used to watch that. Oh, I'm so excited for this. And then watching through it, I'm like, it feels like she was very limited and couldn't actually do a lot because of the storyline and setting and the music. I was like, oh, it's not really a Mia Michaels thing. Oh, I don't like this as much. What happened? Like, I actually was kind of really excited for the dancing, and that's actually not that great. I'm sad. There's a number Catherine Zeta-Jones does with a bunch of women, and they're all wearing like terrible 80s fashion, which is almost hilarious to watch, to Hit Me With Your Best Shot, but they're in a church while doing this, and there's a whole strange side scene going on with Bryan Cranston with that, and I'm just like, whoa, what? And again, Catherine Zeta-Jones clearly actually, performing in this movie, liked her character a lot, even if her story was a little obvious. I think she does the best job for performing, but Huff's pretty good too. Tom Cruise, he's not horrendous, but he is a little ridiculous at times. And part of that is that's his character, though again, his character kind of feels like a version of him. His character is supposed to be one of those, famous rock stars that's so famous that they start being weird, I guess. So he has like a monkey called Heyman. That's literally the monkey's name, Heyman, who travels around with him and is dressed up, and like a harem of scantily clad women who also travel around with him. He seems perpetually drunk or hungover. His manager is played by Paul Giamatti, and he's kind of sleazy, but Tom Cruise gets away with a lot of things just because he's, the quote unquote famous Stacey Jax. And it just felt sort of eye-rolly. Like I kept kind of mentally rolling my eyes almost any time he was on screen. It's like, yeah, I get it. You're supposed to be this famous rock star who's decided to be Are we done with your character yet? I actually kind of want to go back to the ridiculous fell in love in a day love story. Like, stop. This is just, this film, not that great. Even with the songs that I did know, for every version of them, I was like, you know what, I'd rather actually listen to the original version. And that's part of the problem. I think, with musicals is A, the audience already knows these songs, and B, possibly knows them in a better version. So you've already got this bar set really high for what the music's supposed to sound like. But then you've also got the storyline, which wasn't there originally, so you're sort of shoehorning it in, and that often doesn't work. And this was just blah. I did not really care for it at all. So that is our show for today. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.